Good evening and welcome to Ganesh Shot.
What?
Good evening. As you see, I'm here with Brigadier Arun Sahgal, and we're going to talk about the emerging global order, the problems within it, and what constitutes a favorable strategic balance for India. जैसे हम सबको पता है कि दुनिया में जो चित्र है वो बदल रहा है। यूक्रेन में लड़ाई हो रहा है, गाजा में इसराइल और गाजा के बीच में भी घमासान लड़ाई हो रहा है। इसराइल का शुरू हो गया। साउथ चाइना सी में कष्ट है चाइना के लिए। कभी भी वहां लड़ाई छिड़ सकता है। अगर आप यूएसए और चाइना का संबंध देखेंगे, बहुत तनाव है। बहुत दोनों कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि आगे कैसे बढ़ाएं। चाइना का अर्थव्यवस्था डाउन हो रहा है, हम बात कर रहे लगातार हम बात कर रहे हैं उसके बारे में। रशिया का भी स्थिति कुछ लोग बोलते हैं सही है, कुछ लोग बोलते हैं लड़खड़ा रहा है। और रशिया और चाइना का गठबंधन भी बढ़ रहा है। उस हालत में इंडिया का क्या होगा? इंडिया के लिए व्हाट इज द फेवरेबल बैलेंस विच वी नीड? ऑल दिस वी नीड अ लॉट ऑफ इंट्रोस्पेक्शन, और खास करके उस वक्त पे जब हमारा इलेक्शन चल रहा है और एक नया गवर्नमेंट आने वाला है, और एक नया गवर्नमेंट के साथ चाहे वो पुराना पार्टी का क्यों ना हो, एक नया दिशा चाहिए और एक नया सोच चाहिए, राइट? एंड एज इंडिया इज राइजिंग, थिंग्स आर गोइंग टू चेंज। तो ये है बेसिक एडिफिस ऑन विच आई वुड रिक्वेस्ट ब्रिगेडियर सहगल सर, योर व्यूज, यू मे टेक ओवर.
Thank you very much, General Shankar. It's always a pleasure to be on your channel. And today we are talking about emerging strategic balances globally and their impact on India, and how should India shape its own equations on the eve of the elections, and when we are going to see a forming of a new government in the early part of June. Fundamental point we need to understand is this, that the world is in disarray. It is facing multiple wars. There's a war in Ukraine, which is a never ending war in Ukraine. There's a continuing war in Gaza, which is expanding slowly but surely. And there is a negative strategic balance emerging owing to contestation between two big powers, that is China and the United States, in the Indo-Pacific. So the issue basically is this, is what are the main drivers? The first point I want to highlight is this, is that United States, ever since the Cold War, has been involved in multiple wars. For the last 23 years, the United States has been involved in multiple wars which have touched 80 countries, and they are continuing. The, these wars are based on various rationales and logics. One logic is their economic and technological contestations, like we are seeing against China. There is a military contestation, which we are seeing in Europe, and now we are seeing it extended into the Middle East. Then there is a global war on terrorism, which has continued for the last 23 years. And another element that is now emerging is, particularly in the context of Ukraine, is the proxy contest. You keep arming a nation till there are no soldiers left in that country and who are fighting on your behalf for logics and rationals, which I will just come to in a while. So before I go to this, let me highlight to you how is the global order is looking at this point in time. May I have the first slide, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, if you look at this order, there are multiple colors, which is not easy to see.
No, no problem, sir. We'll show it
Okay.
like this.
Okay. So if you see, the United States is a continental power which is in one part of the world and has no acrimonious borders. It has relationships and partnerships with Europe, and this area from the United States to Europe or Atlantic Union is the centrality of the NATO construct, which is trying to influence events in Europe and trying to maintain a balance of power over there. The next area of the US influence is used to be the Middle East, but ever since Biden came, they try to pull out of Middle East, left it to the region. They try to create new alliance systems in Middle East, but by and large, the United States has now come back as a construct, as a rationale of the Gaza conflict. The third area where the United States is present and a strong presence is in the Indo-Pacific, on the what is normally called is the Western Pacific and Northeast Asia. This area. This area is the logic and the rationale for the Chinese, for the Americans to ensure that its main peer competitor China cannot extend its power and influence beyond continental Asia. The the main reasons for the United States to use its power and influence is to ensure that the unipolarity of the American power, influence, control over multiple multilateral organizations, and in the sense to be a driver of the global commerce world order and ensure that whatever realignments take place, they do not impact United States interests. Challenging them is what I call dragon bear, China and Russia. China is a peer competitor. The United States national security strategy clearly indicates China as a peer competitor who has to be cooperated, contained, and if you cannot contain it, it can lead to a conflict. So the three C strategy is what the United States is following vis-a-vis the Chinese are concerned. But China and Russia are now coming together to essentially take control over or to enhance its influence starting from Eastern Europe all the way to Eurasia and from Eurasia right up to the Pacific. Now, in this construct, what needs to be understood is this: is that while the United States is a 27 or $26 trillion economy, the Chinese are also a strong economy, which has a great influence in Asia. As everybody understands, the engine of growth, the area where the maximum growth is going to take place, an area which is going to be the most contested, is the Indo-Pacific. And this is this area in the continental domain that the Chinese are controlling. And with Russia coming along with them, they have a control over the entire continental space and slowly and steadily are now pushing into the maritime domain. So this is where the issue is logic is come about. China and Russia are not only together, there is are signs of emergence of a new coalition of interests. And that coalition of interests is now based on Iran, China, Russia, and North Korea. And if you see this coalition of interests, although it it provides the the dragon and bear and access into the Persian Gulf. It provides access into the Northeast Asia and also supports their interests in the Middle East. So if you notice that the war is more or less getting joined around in this region. So when we are looking at this, what are the basic issues that are emerging out of this? First point we have to understand is the general belief in both camps that global order is undergoing systemic transformation, outcomes of which are unpredictable with variety of unforeseen implications. The second major issue is the contest between these two groups is inevitable. Nature is to be determined, and it will depend on how the two sides are consolidating and projecting their power and influence. So we see every day Taiwan issue coming up. We see every day China, Europe, and China, America contestation on technology and global trade emerging. We see realignment of forces taking place in the Indo-Pacific. So these are the important issues which we need to look at. To deal with this whole scenario, and as we must understand is, as a major global power, a power that has by and large ruled the world since the Second World War, United States is not keeping quiet. It is rearming itself, is recalibrating itself, and it is developing new power alignments and in the region. That what we can see that in what is known as AUKUS, this alignment taking place in this part of the world. We see what is happening in IMEC, and we see also in I2U2. The whole idea is global connectivities and trade. The area which is still United States and its alliances are weak is Africa or the global south. As far as Europe is concerned, that is an area of concern for the United States. The European alliance system is weak, is economically weak, is politically weak, is strategically weak. And their ability to sustain the war in Ukraine, particularly in the context of Russia trying to incrementally getting an upper hand, is becoming a problem for the United States. So this is the situation that is available. As far as China and Russia are concerned, they have three aims. First is there is a belief, particularly in China, that the party-led system is much better and in delivering social, economic, and development goals to its people. Second is that they are very clear that US global influence has to be contested and contained, particularly in areas of their interest. And like I said, the areas of interest are Ukraine. So Ukraine becomes a centerpiece because Russia has to be defeated to ensure that there is a strategic stability in Europe. Now, if Russia is not defeated, and if Russia is able to ensure or push for even I would say uh, an end state where it dominates the post conflict environment, that will have a serious repercussions on the European security. Similarly, in the West Asia, there is this, if this alignment of Iran supported by these two other powers and with the regional proxies are able to mount a challenge to Israel, then the problem occurs is that how are these new alignments going to shape the regional order? It is very clear that there is a difference in views between the Gulf and the Arabs, the Palestinians and their supporters in the region. The the Saudis, the Jordanians, the UAE, and most of the GCC countries are very keen to leave this war fighting behind, consolidate economically, because they understand that the oil as a resource is not going to last long, and this is a finite resource, and they have to move forward and develop new capacities, new capabilities, like the Vision 2030 of the Saudi Arabia, which they're trying to import. So this dynamics is being played at a multiple levels. So I'll stop here. If you have any questions, I will then come back to you.
यस सर आई थिंक कुछ सवाल हैं और सबसे पहले सवाल ये है कि ये तो हमें पता है कि चाइना एंड रशिया टुगेदर आर ट्राइंग टू फॉर्म आई मीन चेंज द ग्लोबल ऑर्डर इसमें तो दो राय नहीं है एंड इन विच अमेरिका विल नॉट हैव अ से बट समवन एल्स विल हैव अ से ओके द क्वेश्चन इज फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन इन दिस इज हु इज दिस समवन though they're trying to change the global order, the replacement of this global order, will it be by China or Russia? That's the question. Or, I mean, in history of the world, there has been no joint, effort at changing this global order. That's way one. And therein
Okay.
lies the contradiction of this whole story.
Okay. The it's an excellent question. My short answer to this question basically is this: that this contestation is likely to continue for some time, and there is no clarity on the end result, end state. It's going to be a multifaceted this thing with moving goalposts, but we have to understand one thing, that why there is a white man's alignment or a Western alignment, particularly in values, in terms of their interests between the United States and the European powers. China and Russia are aligned by circumstances. Now, what shape those circumstances take place will be a critical element. Now, take a scenario in which Russians and impose a favorable end state on Ukraine, it captures territory, makes Ukraine as a neutral country, and which is acceptable by all, and United States purely but maybe under the Trump administration, goes back into the continental US, and it says we are too overextended. We have been fighting wars for the last 24 years. We have had enough. There is no reason why we cannot live peacefully with Russia. Then question arises is what happens to the Chinese? The fundamental point we have to understand is this: is while the Russian contestation with the West is Eurocentric and not Asia-centric, the you know, the contestation between United States and China is Indo-Pacific centric, and that Indo-Pacific centric contestation is this key to this whole game, because until and unless that contestation has a positive outcome, particularly for the Chinese, China will always remain a major global player, but a restrained global player, operating in the sphere of what I call coercion and gray zone operations, in Asia, but never been able to project its power and influence. And its
Right.
power and influence will be constrained.
Uh, I think you put it very nicely, sir. As you have put it, let me extend this.
Okay.
Like you said, likely Trump administration. What will the likely Trump administration do? If it is Biden coming back, this whole story will continue the way it is. If Trump comes, look at the scenario where he pulls out from Ukraine and comes to a decision, right, with Russia, when it comes to some kind of a, terms with Russia. But the likelihood of his doing so with China are very poor. In fact, he'll be more China centric, right?
Mm.
That is the thing. Then where does this leave? Because virtually you're going to China will be the center of all contestation or conflict or whatever you want, and Russia will get its peace.
Okay.
That's what is likely to pan out.
Okay. As far as Trump administration is concerned, in my view, they will go to first principles. The first principle basically is this: that Europe is suffering because of Ukraine. This war is of no value, and even if the
True.
war ends favorably, it will remain a simmering contest, and it will only be or continue to fester on the security metrics, which will have a large scale implications for Europe. So, for the Trump administration or the new administration, other than the Biden administration, whoever comes, Trump administration, the dumbing down of Ukraine conflict and reaching some kind of a negotiated settlement with Russia uh, would be their first option. The sec the reason for that is very simple, is that the road to Chinese global power projection goes through its control over Indo-Pacific, and more specifically the Asia Pacific, or that is ASEAN, East Asia,
Yes.
etc., etc. Now, if the Americans are forced to withdraw, or Americans are contested and contained in the region, and China becomes a major domo, that would mean that the American power and influence now rests only in Europe and in the continental US, which nobody is touching, it's too far away. And with that, there will be a much bigger upheaval in terms of realignments of power, particularly in global south. People looking, the Europeans also trying to look at how to mend fences with China. Right now, we see there is a huge amount of bullying of China being done by European Union in terms of starting these uh, uh, against electronic vehicles and its solar panel,
Yes, sir.
the
Tariffs. A lot of tariff wars
tariff wars,
erupted. Yeah.
etc. So bottom line basically is this: is that China uh, then will have a much bigger space. Please understand that if that also happens, the ASEAN countries, the Chinese neighbors, as well as countries like Korea, will fall into the lap of the Chinese. Japan will continue to fight it out, but Japan will be a lone power, and Japan, when push comes to shove, I don't think Japanese are capable of withstanding the Chinese uh, missile and other attacks, or let's say intimidating tactics they will follow, and so if the Americans are pushed beyond the second island chain, then this whole ball game will change. So
Yes, sir.
as far as the United States is concerned, the contestation and the balance of power in Indo-Pacific is central to American unipolar influence globally. The same issue is now emerging in West Asia, where again the realignments of power, and there again we see two trend lines taking place. Is that Turkey, who's a partner, NATO
NATO
partner,
countries.
is now pushing towards a new alignment of a new alignment of where they're talking to connect Turkey through Iraq to Syria to Iraq and on to Iran as a
Iran.
new transportation corridor which comes to the
It
Persian
doesn't end
Gulf.
anyway.
Huh? No, it's Persian Gulf. They're pushing it very hard.
Yes,
It's a
yes, yes,
simple
yes.
alternative because they are saying that IMEC is a dead issue. So and then we are also seeing what's happening is that the Saudis are also investing heavily in China. See where the money is. That's where the money is. The Chinese.
Yeah,
They have
you follow
the
the
resources.
money trails.
So the question basically is, and the Russians are also with the Syria. There are unrelated reports, which are, of course, there was some. This thing is that the Russians had warned the Iranians about the Israelis taking off with the nuclear weapon command posts during this last bit of strikes on it. But I mean, it has not been fully proved through other sources. But the point at issue is that the like the Jordanians and the Saudis and the the American partners, French and the British played a part. Uh, you can expect the similar part being played by the Iranians and the Chinese and the Russians in the future conflict over here. So that basically means is that the entire Middle Eastern space is going to remain contested, and that is where the whole issue comes about. And there is another element to that is that the element of that is that with China and Russia and Iran undertaking joint exercises in the Persian Gulf, and with the Houthis and the Somalians pushing the agenda in the Red Sea and controlling and disrupting, not controlling, disrupting shipping over there. The ability of these countries to disrupt strategic economic trade along the sea lines of communications is very high, and we get directly involved into this. So this is an issue that we need to take cognizance of as we look at this balance of power equations.
I completely agree with you, sir. That things are going to get even more complicated even if Trump comes. Uh, and of course, I have my views whether this coalition will function. I mean, we are all talking of an emerging coalition of China, North Korea, Iran, and Russia, right? Whether this will function the way we think it will is a question mark. And it's
Interest based.
because it interest based, sir. It's not in anyone's interest to control. You see, all of us think that look, once these people come into play with Houthis and things, and the Somalian piracy and all, they can control the waterways or the choke points of Bab al Mandab and Strait of Hormuz. But if they control any of this, it is to China's detriment. Because it will equally affect China because China is already being affected by it. And China can ill afford its trade being disrupted. So to that extent, that argument itself becomes slightly tenuous, but you can't wish away that argument. It is there. I agree
No,
with you.
no, I totally agree with you. But I just like to caution one thing, sir. That is, keep a close watch on the timing and the manner in which the Iranians are pushing Pakistan for that pipeline. Now,
So let us see.
uh, uh, if that pipeline comes through and gets connected to the Pakistani grid, I done a great study on the Pakistani oil grids, then it will not be difficult for the Chinese to haul this
Take it.
oil to up north. to tariff.
Up
And
north, sir,
also,
again is a
we also know that there are new pipelines coming up in Kazakhstan to connect China, and also the Trans-Siberian pipeline, which has now been completed. So it's while it's important that these things are there, but it is much more critical for a country like us that is dependent totally on the energy flows via the sea. That's the point.
that I am completely with you.
Okay.
Because knowing where Pakistan is and how
Mhm.
dependent Pakistan is on USA, whether that pipeline will be allowed to come up by USA is a question mark.
Okay. So
So
now can I
we'll
move to
leave.
the second part?
Yeah, so we'll leave it there. We'll get to the second part. I'll get the second map up, and then yeah, we'll
Okay.
talk of
So
this.
my next part is, where does India fit into this global balance of power? I mean,
Correct.
that's the main issue
That's
over here.
the logical thing. So
Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Uh, can I have the next one, please?
yeah.
Okay. Uh, this is just a huge maps trying to explain to you the power dynamics in Asia. The red and the pinks are the areas or zones of influence. They may not be totally to the scale. And the
That's okay,
blues
sir.
are the U.S. influences. And India, as you know, is a strategic partner, but which has got uh, uh, bal- power equations with both east and west. So India plays on both sides, but I'll come to that in a moment. Okay, India has got four key strategic objectives. That's something which we need to look at. First objective is preserve internal unity and territorial integrity. Second is economic growth and development. Third is acquire advanced technologies and capabilities. And third is emerge as a leading global power which has the potential of influencing global dynamics. I say again, it has the potential of influencing global dynamics. So when we look at India areas of interest, we look at it India's areas of interest from three concentric circles. One is the inner ring, what is called the strategic neighborhood. The second is the outer ring, which links India to its aspirational areas of influence. And third is the global ring, which links India to major global players and institutions. When we look at the inner ring, it is apparent to everybody, and everybody knows is that India in South Asia is partner to everybody, and none of the other states have got common borders. So India is the only country which connects all the South Asian players. But what is important for us to understand is that India is a power which is a non-expansionist power. We have tried to deal with our neighbors in a good neighborly sense and have never used power and influence to or coercion against them. The result, unfortunately, has been that on the west we have a troublesome borders with Pakistan and a history of 75 years, which continues to adversely affect our security dynamics. The more important part of this is Pakistan is becoming a willing collaborator with China and asserting its influences on our borders. So it's not only Pakistan we have to deal with it, but we have to deal with China Pakistan coalition of interest, and that is where the problem occurs. As people who keep track of things are aware that the new road which they are trying to make through Karakoram
Agil
Highway,
pass. Yeah.
Agil Pass, that's going through our territory, and Shaksgam Valley, which is given away by Pakistan to China for grazing rights in the Hunza Valley. So So what I'm trying to make is this, that they have to take cognizance of this. As far as our other neighbors are concerned, Bhutan is our closest neighbor, but which is being pressurized by China for resolution of boundary. Resolution of boundary is one issue, but the Chinese basically want to open up consulate and bring Bhutan as an important strategic player and a partner by through inducements, aid, assistance, etc. The number of things that is happening in Bhutan, so which is not important for this discussion today, but it's important to say is that Bhutan is now becoming a key element of the Chinese regional strategy, and although Bhutan remains entirely focused on India, the very fact that the Prime Minister had to go on the eve of elections to have a word with the king indicates its importance. The next area is Nepal. Nepal was a Hindu kingdom, now has become a secular state. But ever since the CPN Maoists and the UML and other people have come to power, they have started playing games. And here the interesting part lies is this is China with its fat wallets money is inducing Nepalese to become their proxies against India and create all kinds of problems for India. We have handled them. We are trying to handle them with a manner which we are best that we do through inducements, through discussions, to talking about our old relationship. But the fact of the matter is that in this balance of power game, we are not like the Chinese as coercive, and we have to somehow always play a second fiddle to their balancing issues. The similar story comes about in Bangladesh. Now, Bangladesh is a country which we need to look at seriously. Although Sheikh Hasina is a close partner, but there are things happening in Bangladesh. There are new port facilities that are coming up now with the report of a dry dock coming up in those port facilities near Chittagong. I'm forgetting the name of the new port area, and where the Chinese are going to deploy their submarines for refit and repair. So this is an important development. I mean, you could have Chinese both SSNs and the conventional submarines operating from this area is an issue that cannot but concern us. Similarly, we also seeing the Sidway port and the area being developed as major base and and area from where Chinese strategic resources are pumped up into the southwestern China in Yunnan. And the important part over here is this: is people forget the fact is that when you create strategic assets, you also bring securitization of those assets. Securitization of those assets becomes an important issue, and that comes with hand in hand. And then we also have the problem issue with in Sri Lanka. So we need to ensure we need to take our strategic neighborhood more seriously, ensure that it even if it not becomes our sphere of influence, it remains it remains balanced in a fashion that it does not pose any threat or challenges or does not become a pawn in the hand of our incremental or in the small hand of powers that are not against India. And we have a classic case of Maldives, where this whole game is being played in front of our eyes, and we are seeing how the Chinese are gloating over the fact that Ms. Mizu's party won 60% of the seats and have now become the majority party in the parliament, and therefore that strengthens their position, etc., etc. And because I mean, you have to see the location of Maldives along the sea lines of communication to understand this. So first and foremost, therefore, is again the turmoil in Myanmar is hampering our eastward expansion. There is a trilateral highway which we are trying to build via Mandalay, linking up with Thailand. That
Thailand
is
and Jeb.
That's not happening. I mean, happening. The work is slow. And there was another port south of Sitwe, from where we were trying to make a link up with Thailand. That too has not happened. So, so the question is, there is a sense of isolation and lack of credible influence emerging in our neighborhood. That's something which we need to uh, work upon. That's important issue. We need to work seriously upon. The next ring I go to is the outer ring. The outer ring, it has two. May I have the map, please?
Yes, sir.
Uh, the outer ring has from Southeast Asia to the West Asia. That's our outer ring. This is our area of influence. One feeds us with our energy and resources. It's an area where we have worked very hard over the last 10 years to build up partnership relationships, which are not based on only oil and diaspora, but these are relationships are built on developing combined capacities, developing projects, investments, trade, and also developing corridors which helps connect us to Europe, uh, and bypassing the constraints that I talked about earlier, the Red Sea and the others. So this is an area that is of critical importance, and it also helps us in dampening the effect of Islamic radicalism, which is being propagated against us by the Pakistanis. So this is an important area, and we have invested very heavily in it, and we would like to ensure that. So this brings us me to the point that if we are looking west, we have to have a good relationship with Iran, we have to have a good relationship with the Gulf states, and we have to have a good relationship with Saudi Arabia. And we have been managing this well. The fact that we leverage Qatar to release our people, to we also have to also uh, remember one thing is that while today the Russian oil has become a very cheap resource, but if you look at the figures, our majority of oil is still coming from Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and our gas is LNG is completely coming from Qatar.
Qatar.
So this is an area that we need to be very, very clear about, and that's why we are spending so much of resources, energy, and trying to build up new capacities and capabilities and interests and investments. Now, coming to Southeast Asia, this is again an area of critical importance. Although the recent survey of the ISA, that the Studies Institute, uh, talked about very little understanding about India amongst the important stakeholders in Southeast Asia. China and America rule the rules. But please understand this, that incrementally, as India's power and influence is growing, there are new supply chains coming up, new investments coming up, and there's a huge amount of interest. We have a $150 billion plus trade with ASEAN. So this is an important area for us. And added to this area is our whole dynamics with China. And here I'd like to highlight some points. The China issue, or our basic our estrangement with China, is the firm aspect which provides us with a certain degree of alignment of interests. I'm using the word carefully, alignment of interests with the United States and its alliance partners in the Pacific and East Asia. And this alignment of interest with partners is, is a multi-dimensional alignment. It covers the technology, it covers economics, it covers trade, and it also covers military aspects. So, so what is important to us to understand is this: is that India has to remain connected with ASEAN, And here there are important aspects. We have reached out to Philippines, and we are building up strong military, sales, economic, and trade partnerships with both Philippines and Vietnam. We have not done that well vis-a-vis the Indonesians, because we there is a perception amongst Indonesians is that, India is a big power, but India's ability to support its economic interest is limited, etc., etc., etc. There is a work in place for us, and similarly uh, in Malaysia. But the point we have to understand is this: India has to both economically, technologically invest in ASEAN and the countries around it, uh, including Korea, and to a limited degree with Japan. Japan is all our important partners. Our relationship with Australia are on the mend. We have a huge uh, convergences both in strategic and economic terms. In fact, the only country which we have, I mean, in the region we have a free trade area is Australia. So, if you look at in this the dynamic, the area of play for India in 2024 is going to be these two areas, that is West Asia and Southeast Asia, extending up to the uh, Quad countries, uh, that is Japan and Australia. So this brings me to the third and the final circle, that is the global circle. And here the global balance of power is important. For us, United States is not only a consequential player, it provides us a hedge against Chinese dominance. We 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 like it or we don't like it, but this is an important issue. It's the same reason that relationship with India is provides a credibility to the strategic partnership to the United States. Please look at the power equations in the American alliance system. Apart from India, I mean, we are not an alliance partner, but we are a partner. Apart from India as a strategic partner, none of them of his alliance partners have a credible military capacities, capabilities, nor trade, or being a great influencer. Japan is trying to become one, but Japan can at best will be a resource providing country. Japan is now being pushed by the United States to play a more dominant role in its own security. South Korea remains on tender hooks. He's got a challenge from North Korea. He's got a challenge from China.
I know.
It has a boundary with China. So the question with the Koreans is this: that their state of play will have to be limited. Another element that we need to understand is this: is that all these alliance partners of United States, while they are strategic partners, they are very strongly economically aligned to China. And this economic alignment with China constrains their strategic space of action. So this is how the game is being played. But for United States, a strong India, credible India, which is if 2030, I'll just take the scenario of 2030, 2035, when we are the third largest economy, when we have a strong naval capabilities, we have strong long range missile systems, we have a credible outreach both in South China Sea as well as in the Persian Gulf and West Asia, along the east coast of Africa. Nobody can play a role better than that of stabilizing Indo-Pacific than us. And this is the interest of the United States of looking at India as a stabilizing power. No other country can play this role. So for India, in the next couple of years, that is post 2024 June, The important thing lies is consolidating its interest in West Asia, consolidating its interest in East Asia, maintaining a credible partnership with the United States, and last and most importantly, also maintain strong alignment of interest with Russia, because Russia is an important player. Russia will also be a constraining influence to the Chinese. Russia will also be a strong resource provider, which we cannot overlook. And the fact of the matter is this: we like it or not, another 20 years down the line, we still will be dependent upon one way or the other of the Russian systems and spare parts and other elements, including our strategic in arena. We have to recognize one thing: there is no country which has helped us in our strategic programs as much as Russia has done, including our space programs. So I think I'll stop here and I'll ask General to give me,
Yes,
give
sir.
us.
I think you outlined what are India's imperatives to obtain a favorable balance in this entire setup, in the emerging setup. The first thing I think which you have highlighted is that 2024 will be a consequential year, which means that you have to consolidate your gains and ensure you don't slip back and continue with your rise through economic integration and your economic activity. And for that, we have to first keep our neighborhood intact and our neighborhood aligned with us. If not aligned, at least not inimical to us, I think, which is a very valid point. The second thing you said, our major interests now in 2024 will lie economically, energy point of view, and XYZ in West Asia and Southeast Asia, which we need to focus on. But when you come to the global thing, what is emerging is very clear. China will be our constant adversary along with Pakistan. North Korea is too far away. It will not probably affect us also. We have no other choice but to go with USA because China being the main adversary, we have to go with USA. But in this entire construct, Iran and Russia are someone whom we can't ignore. In fact, both of them we've had very good traditional equations with them. And at no stage should our actions put these equations at peril. While you have said that we depend on Russia for strategic purposes, energy purposes, resources, even technology, because a lot of our technology is Russia-based, and we have very good equations with Russia. I think Iran is also an equally important player for us, whether to handle Afghanistan or to handle Pakistan, or also for the North-South transport corridor as and when it comes up. Right, and it also is the wedge which you can drive back to China and to Turkey, though Iran has its own way of looking at things. So these are the broad things which you have think. So I think this is what the agenda is for 2024 and for the new government which comes into play. Right. I'll not ask you any questions. I just summarized what you said to put things in perspective to everyone, because we can keep debating upon this and continue with it. We'll probably have another session as to what should India's focus in the neighborhood be, and we'll split it into parts. Now, Vishwanathan has a question, and I'll take it from there also. Under whose influence is South America, Mexico, and major parts of Africa, which is not marked in the map? But notwithstanding that, whether whose influence is there or not, do we have interest in this? Do we need to develop interest in this? Especially with a country like Bolivia for rare earths, country like Guyana and Venezuela for oil, because Guyana is supposed to have new, reserves of oil which are coming up. And should we also seek out or create new interests in South America? So that's the question, and especially with Argentina going against the Chinese. And Argentina, as you know, is one of the bigger countries in South America. So what should our play in South America be? I'll turn this question a bit. That's how I look at it.
It's an excellent question, sir. My answer is We cannot ignore South America, and we do it at our own peril. It's a if you notice, one of the greatest areas of investment which has been done by our immediate competitor China is in South America. They try to corner the rare earth market. They corner the other critical elements which are available today, and they are also enhancing their influence in the region. It is important, therefore, we have some relationships. I'm told, like you rightly said, Bolivia, Chile. We have some investments. We have also over a period of time bought Venezuelan oil to in much to the much chagrin
USA.
of the United States. But the short answer to you is that we have to do it. But uh, unfortunately, what happens is that when we do our regional analysis and global analysis, we tend to overlook this issue. So I respect what your comments are, and the short answer is yes, we cannot overlook.
We need
So
to, right.
we have to
So,
engage.
next question is, if Russia and China become very close, it's not only a problem for USA but also for India. This is his comment. And in that context, you'll have to look at this question. As Russia and the famous General Winter have never been defeated for centuries, it would be prudent for USA to mend its ways and befriend Russia for the larger good.
Well said, sir. It's prudent for Russia to befriend this thing, but the sad part is that United States has is a heuristic power, and it believes that we are we are just below God at this point in time. We cannot be defeated. So what they are doing it is that they have an muddled and open-ended objectives. They have movable goalposts. They give no quarter to anybody who challenges their narrative, and they have little benchmarks of judging success or failures. So, under these circumstances of hubristic perceptions, they are not willing to let go. The only thing, like we discussed in the last hour or so, is the fact is that if the Trump administration comes out, he's more pragmatic. He understands what the whole dynamics are. It's pointless. He knows that it's pointless fighting with a big country like Russia. It makes no sense. The problem for the United States of America, basically vis-a-vis Russia, is that unlike China, China is a Chinese country, Russia is a quasi European country, and strong Russia, with moving inroads into Eastern Europe and subsequently through gas and other alignments with the Western Europe, can over a period of time impact the last goalpost of the American influence in Europe. So that is something which they are not willing to accept. I used to work with one American called Andy Marshall. He is the father of the net assessment. One of his famous prognosis was, what happens if Germany and Russia come together? That used to make them sleepless nights. And even if you notice now, the any pro-Russian statement coming out of Germany is immediately contradicted, and you see how Western press goes after Germany after that. So there are these historical issues, perspective. So it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be this thing, but if you have an impetuous president like Mr. Trump, then you can expect that they would be at least trying to reconcile differences with Russia and try and come to some modus vivendi which will bring relative peace and stability to Europe, and through that to rest of the global globe.
Right, sir. Next question is, it seems the war is fueling up. In this way, it will be a world war. Is India preparing for a world war? There can be bio war, AI, drone, vagara, vagara. But I would say, is India preparing for the world war? That is the larger question. And will there be a world war? I mean, these two are the main questions in this particular questions.
Okay, this is not a. I mean, normally one would say, look, what is the kind of a question you are asking? But it's a very pertinent question. I say why it is pertinent question. From my perspective, I see a scenario emerging if the Europeans start pushing in more troops, NATO troops into Ukraine, and I see there are the attack systems and all those long range missile systems increasingly hitting the Russian targets. I see a scenario emerging where Russia might be forced to use what is called a non-strategic nuclear weapon. Now, use of a non-strategic nuclear weapon changes equations hugely. If the non-strategic nuclear weapons does a huge amount of damage, creates a large scale casualties, there is no way the NATO will not react. If NATO reacts, the question is would they react? Because as far as Russia is concerned, it has defined its limits of tolerance and say this is my red line. Beyond this, I am not going to accept it. You guys want to consolidate and coalesce to destroy me, I will have no option but to use my strategic capabilities. On the other hand, allowing Russia to get away with it will create a new first in the strategic equations where a power has used nuclear weapons against a non-nuclear power and got away with it. So the escalation dynamics of such a scenario has the potential of engulfing the world into a much larger conflict. Now that's an important issue. I do not think Gaza or any of these issues are going to become into a large scale conflict. They will not. I think in another couple of months the things will start scaling down. But the Ukraine with this inducement of induction of another 60 odd billion dollars of aid, particularly when the American economy is so debt based that they owe $75 trillion to the world, is something, and the kind of weapon system that they're providing is a game changer, and that will have a very serious repercussions in the regional balance, and that will impact the global balance.
Right. Okay. The next question, sir, feasibility of Japan, Australia, India axis building as a counter for Chinese ambitions. Now he's talking of something lesser than a quad.
Yeah, no, I know. You see, we already have a good relationship with. We have a trilateral Japan, Australia, India trilateral, etc., etc. But the question, unfortunately, sir, is this: that Japan and Australia operate in a different arena, and we operate in a different arena. And in terms of security architectures, there is no linkages. There is linkages of some sorts with Australia because Australia, as you know, is also an Indian Ocean power. Indian Ocean goes right up to just sort of Darwin, Perth, in that area. So basically, but the this axis is not going to emerge. What axis that is emerging is Japan, Australia, Philippines. Now that is going to be a very interesting axis because this axis is now for the first time penetrating the South China Sea. And we are going beyond that famous gap which General Kumar always reminds, Boy Gap. Boy Gap was that gap and coming into the South China Sea and closer to the Indonesians. So this Thomas Shoal Island cases, the kind of escalation that is taking place, etc. have a much more serious consequences. Issue comes about is this: is that how will India react to these developments? In these developments, India's whose partnership with Philippines and whose partnership with Australia and Japan. And tomorrow, hopefully, we believe that both Indonesia and Malaysia understand the challenge that they have, will build up with India a countervailing partnerships, not so much to contain China or contest China, but like I always continue to maintain a favorable strategic balance free of coercion.
Yeah, I think so, sir. I think so. And in fact, if I may add to what you have said, I think India has to have, give some signals as to which way it will swing in case trouble breaks out in the Western Pacific, right? And
True.
that is some signaling which we have not done. And for why we have not done the kind of signaling which we should be doing is something which I think the new government has to take note of. Okay.
Absolutely right.
Uh, Right, that's a very important thing, sir, which I think we have been a little soft on. Okay. You said Russia, if Russia sustains a favorable outcome in Russia-Ukraine war, question. There are Western reports that Russia has so far lost 20 naval ships. If true, your view on Russian performance so far. This links up with your previous question. Can Russia get away with it, or will Russia be pinned, and what are the consequences of the whole story?
Sir, my answer to you is my reading of the situation in Ukraine and the Russian perspective is basically this. A. Russia has suffered losses. True. Russia may have lost 20 ships. True. But please try and understand the recuperation rate of Russia. The production is three times high. They're getting assistance from North Korea. They're getting assistance from China, dual use. They're getting assistance from Iran. All first rate equipment which is suitable for this kind of operations. Three, Russians are incrementally swallowing and capturing territory in the north and as well as a bit by bit in the south. Four, no doubt the Crimea, the bridge, famous bridge uh, uh, is under threat from the Ukrainians. So is the Black Sea, but that does not undermine the Russian influence and Russian capacities and capabilities. There are much more. Russia is strong, credible, capable, and will be able to withstand whatever is pumped into Ukraine through proxies. The issue is that's why the narrative has changed. Narrative is now of not saying that we will not let Putin win. I mean, not we will defeat Putin, but to saying is that we will not allow Russia to win.
Yeah.
So, so,
Uh,
so the question is, for how long and for how many lives will the West fight the last Russian? The Ukrainians are dying, and according to inputs that are coming, I read today in New York Times, some place or the other, is basically is that 500,000 Ukrainians have died. Ukraine can't afford so many deaths, and there are about 3 million Ukrainians who have moved into Europe, and there are
Europe.
about 1.5 million who have moved into Russia. So it's a destroyed country. And what are you doing with the destroyed country? You want to make a bulwark of Western alliance system at the gates of Moscow? It's asinine, yeah. It's absolutely not workable. It won't work. You cannot defeat Russia. Unfortunately, it's true. If Russia comes under such a famous threat, I mean, it's such a comes in such a situation, it has options, which are like I discussed earlier, are not a very good options. And all indicators, despite the disinformation campaign, indicate that the Ukrainians are increasingly losing territory, men, and material.
That's fine, sir. I don't think we'll take any more questions. Isaac says, please show the right map of India. Let me explain. This is not a map of India which has been drawn. This is an international map with this thing. So these are there. The maps which are shown largely are to explain a point of view. So a few things here and there, and these are not exact maps. These are shaded colored maps. So leave it at that.
Representative maps.
Representative maps. So I don't think you should worry too much about that. Respected sir, comprehensive coverage. Thank you. So nice of you. Right. Of course, there's a Pakistani who says China has done a lot for Pakistan. All the best to China and Pakistan in their, whatever they're doing. Okay. I only hope they know what they're doing. Okay. HR platform, sir, subscribed and liked. Thanks a lot. I would like more of you to subscribe because, like I said yesterday, no other platform and no other channel in YouTube you'll get this kind of analysis. Okay, and I have no doubt about it. Okay, and I think, sir, we'll call it a day here. I must thank you, sir, for this great expose you've given on what's
Thank you,
coming
sir.
ahead, and especially when the new government is going to get in. By June first week, it's going to come in. So we have to look at things in a different viewpoint. And what's happened is behind us. What is to happen is ahead. That's my view. Your last words, and then I'll take a bow. So.
So thank you very much, sir. All I'm trying to say is that there is a global development taking place. India is at the center of it, and India will have to take much larger calls than we have so far. We have to build out good relationships in our neighborhood, and we also have to extend our our, our tentacles into our the first chain and the up to West Asia and Southeast Asia, because that's where our interests lie. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks a lot for all of you who asked some very good questions, right? And I'm also grateful to Global Fin Services that takes 2 minutes to edit the map. Please let me know if you need help. Look, I thanks a lot for your help. But the fact is, most of us collect maps from various sources, and these are representative to put across an idea. You can't be fixed on the fact that little one, thing is marked,
No, but
much
I would
marked.
like to
Don't get
meet. I mean, like to go to him and get my map sorted out.
Yeah, yeah, we'll do that. So you just give me your email and we'll see how we can take help from you. And I thought we had some very good questions also, sir, for today. Thank you. And lastly, sir, thank you and Jai Hind to the effort you've taken to put us wise on
Thank
many of
you.
these issues.
God bless
Thank you,
India.
sir.
God bless everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and Jai Hind.
Jai.